When did you realize you married the wrong person? Story 1. We were in the bathroom getting showered and dressed for a friend's wedding. I was in the best shape of my life at the time, feeling good about myself, and I thought I looked good in the suit. She was finishing her makeup and I remarked at how beautiful she looked. I waited for her to say something nice in reply, but she didn't, and it just hit me. I couldn't remember a single time that she complimented me on my appearance. So I said that to her. I said, I always tell you how beautiful you are and how attracted to you I am, but I can't recall you ever saying that I look good or that I look handsome. She stopped applying her mascara long enough to dismissively roll her eyes at me. So I made the mistake of asking her, do you even find me attractive? And she flatly said, no. I asked, why did you marry me then? And she said, I didn't think it was important at the time. I had never felt so ugly and unloved, and it hurt even more when I had been feeling so good about myself for once in my life 30 seconds earlier. We now have a Discord. Check out the server in the link in the description. Story 2. Not married, but together for years. Got diagnosed with cancer and she kinda just shut off. She then decided to leave several months later. At an appointment, I was officially 1 year clear, which is a milestone. I realized I was alone through a lot of it. She never wanted anything to do with it. Was a revelation to myself that the relationship breakdown wasn't all because of me. Got my 3-year tests this weekend. Blood tests and scans, etc. Current girlfriend is driving me and then taking me out to lunch afterwards. Hell of an upgrade. Isn't this like some well-known phenomenon, actually, where people often leave their spouses after they get terribly sick? I believe it's biased towards one side, like women leave more often or men leave more often, but I don't actually know. Either way, what a terrible situation to be in as the person who's sick. I also get that it's a huge emotional, weight that you have to bear, but come on, if you really love someone, you'll stick through it. I think, at least. Story 3. 6 months after our wedding, when I found out about the emotional, he says only emotional, but I'm pretty sure it was physical too, affair through text messages. He had sent his affair partner screenshots of my texts to him in which I was begging him to talk to me and tell me what was wrong. They both proceeded to make fun of my desperation to fix my marriage, and his affair partner said something along the lines of, "Poor woman, she doesn't know anything and keeps begging you for attention and affection." The moment I read those words, I realized how big of a mistake I had made. Story 4. I realized 5 years into our 19-year marriage. But the nail in the coffin that made me leave was when my ex said that our children hadn't earned his love. And that shook my whole foundation. Literally speechless for 2 days, and then I started thinking, wondering if I had earned his love yet. And I couldn't stop those kinds of thoughts. You don't earn love. It is freely given, especially to children. What is this guy thinking? Is he like, these children just showed up one day and now they have to work for my love? Nah, my man, you made those. You got a responsibility, and part of that responsibility is to love them. Story 5. I came home from a long day of work to find burn marks all over the carpet and linoleum. My then husband had spent the entire day playing games on his PC. While doing so, he had been ignoring our puppy, who had somehow managed to get a hold of a phone battery, bite through it, and cause a small fire. Thankfully, the dog wasn't injured. This event, on top of finding out shortly before he had been lying about going to community college for almost a year, was the turning point where my feelings died. Story 6. It was a death of 1,000 cuts. One of the first was when I realized that she didn't trust me. We'd been together around 10 years at this point, but I had a moment of clarity and literally said to her, "You don't trust me, do you?" Before she could answer, I said, "You don't trust anybody," and she agreed. She would routinely throw the kids out of the tub and the bathroom completely naked because they splashed her while getting a bath. And not just that, she would yell at the top of her lungs at how bad they were. The kids were around 2 to 4 at the time. Oh, God forbid the toddler splashes the water in the tub. Another time, I don't even remember the cause, but I tried to play mediator. As in, "Okay, daughter, you did something wrong. Let's apologize to mommy." And she would. Then I'd ask mommy to apologize to our daughter for whatever it was, and mom absolutely refused to apologize. I'd known this lady for about 20 years, and I've never heard her apologize. Literally never. The final straw was when one of our kids wanted a hug goodnight before bedtime. She locked herself in our bedroom and refused the hug because she had hugged them earlier in the day. Kids were crying. They didn't understand. I was devastated watching this unfold. Why doesn't mom want to hug me? I try my best to not let it impact me, but we share custody now and I have to watch how she interacts with the kids. It's hard. The best consolation is that the kids are getting older and they're starting to figure it out. Story 7. Was engaged, not married. 3-year international relationship. completely ready for the battle with the US immigration system, which I still feel can go directly screw itself. She had to leave after a normal month-long visit, which was totally normal and what we'd been doing for years. We PDA'd to all hell to the airport, and she said herself that she couldn't wait to come back. Then went completely silent. Zero contact. The second she got home, Europe. Took 3 days to get a phone call saying she was done. December 21st, 2019. I knew driving to work that morning that something horrible was going to happen that day. I could feel it, and I wish I could forget that feeling. Still ain't over it. Don't plan to ever be. Just a shout to OP or anyone in a similar situation. You don't have to be over it yet, but I do encourage everyone to get over it at some point. Feeling a loss when you lose a loved one in any way, whether that's unaliving or this, is completely natural. Letting it take control of your life and your emotional state forever isn't. It's really important you find a support system and you can talk to them and just figure things out. Not getting over it isn't the answer. Trust me, dude. Story 8. I had no idea how he felt about me. Almost 9 years together. He didn't propose, I did. He didn't tell his family when we married. They found out online. He never shared his energy or emotions with me. I ultimately had a realization that I didn't even know what he thought of me, other than that I was pretty. I didn't know if he thought I was cool or funny or interesting or smart. I would share myself with him, my thoughts, interests, humor, and get nothing in return. I realized it had always been this way. I felt unseen and unheard. I felt like I was just boring and uninteresting. I didn't feel special. I just wanted to feel some sort of connection. I wanted our souls to meet. He just seemed incapable. Story 9. I waited on her hand and foot. Every night, brought her tea. Checked every room to make sure there were no intruders, went to the store for her if she wanted a snack, etc. One day I was really sick with the flu and asked if she'd get me a Gatorade from the store. She was shocked that I asked and said, absolutely not. Then I thought about it and realized she had never complimented me, supported me, nurtured me, consoled me, or showed any level of emotional care for me. All she did was complain that I didn't do enough for her. It took me a while, but I realized I was in an abusive relationship. The worst part is I tried to make it work, still, after all that, and it was her that pushed me away, because she wanted to move to Portland, but it was also because I didn't make enough money at the time. Story 10. On my wedding day, we were married at her parents' house, a beautiful place on a private country club. The entire day was about her, and she spent more time hanging out with her friend and getting drunk than with me. I stayed busy visiting with all the guests during the day. After all the guests left and it was down to her parents and me, I find her passed out drunk upstairs in a bedroom. I picked her up and carried her to our car to take her home. Needless to say, our wedding night consisted of her sleeping it off. 5 years later, she went into inpatient treatment, and after she sobered up and was released, she told me that she didn't love me and wanted a divorce. That's brutal, man. Can you imagine someone sobering up, making positive changes in their life, and then realizing they don't love you? It's like, damn, you were just a really long drunken mistake. That sucks. Story 11. When I realized that my wife loved playing Final Fantasy XIV to the neglect of our own relationship. She loved it so much, she unalived herself. She had a problem with obsessively playing WoW in the past, and we broke up over it. She quit the game cold turkey and got a job, so we made up. And then we got married. And not long after the marriage, she was right back into the gaming, but now it was Final Fantasy. And we never had any quality time as a couple to just talk. All she ever wanted to do in her free time was just drink wine and play her game. My wife was an alcoholic. She passed away recently, and in the course of going through her things, I found out why. Her iPad message history revealed that she had a whole string of in-game boyfriends the whole time we were together. 12 years. I found lots of intimate messages, and the night she died, she was excited and happy because she just married her current boyfriend in-game. But she partied a little too hard that night and drank herself to death. I messaged one of her guildmates to find out what happened. Turns out, no one ever knew she was married in real life. She never talked about me. But she sure did flirt with a lot of guys when she was drunk. And the guy she married in-game was himself married in real life. We lived in the US, but she liked to play on European servers and meet European guys. And I had been on a business trip to Germany for a week the night she died. She was so angry at me for not taking her with me, but it was a business trip and not a vacation. I realize now that what she really wanted was an opportunity to bang her Italian boyfriend while I was at work. She had the Duolingo app on her phone to learn Italian, and her browser history showed that she had been looking up Italian cooking recipes. My wife never cooked, so she was clearly thinking about an in-person meetup at some point. I was grieving the loss of my wife when I found all of this out, and now I'm dealing with a lot of anger too. If she hadn't passed away and somehow I found this out, I'd be divorcing her butt right now. Ugh, not only was she cheating, but she was a casual? It sounds like she didn't even raid. Okay, in all seriousness though, this blows. It sounds like she had a little more than a gaming problem. My heart goes out to OP for having to find this out this way. Story 12. I dated a guy once who was divorced. He told me he had introduced his, at the time, wife to an MMORPG. I don't remember which one. And she got super into it as well. So much so that she met some guy through the game that she left her, at the time, husband to marry this dude. It didn't work out between us either, but I always felt so bad for him. He had 2 kids with this woman who had ditched him for some guy in an online game. He introduced me to Morrowind, which is still one of my favorite games of all time. I wasn't in any way ready for a serious relationship, so eventually we broke up. But every once in a while, I still think of him and hope that he finally found a nice wife who he deserves. This OP has a bit where they replied to the last post I read, so I'm going to read that out. I know this won't make you feel any better, but I just wanted you to know that you're not alone in having this kind of thing happen. I'm terribly sorry you're dealing with so many emotions right now. Let yourself grieve. Anger is part of grieving, and take care of yourself. You deserved better than that, and there are good partners out there who will love you the way you deserve to be loved. Hugs if you want them. Story 13. It was actually almost immediately after getting married. Our relationship had taken a nosedive as soon as we moved in together. But after we got married, while we were in Greece on our honeymoon, he absolutely lost his mind on me in public. I had wanted to go see a beach on the island that is supposed to be one of the most beautiful in the world, so we tried to catch the bus, but it never came. He screamed at me, telling me he hated traveling with me and how could I ruin his vacation like this. Then we walked to the beach nearby and he went swimming with 2 of his friends who he insisted come with us on the trip. I was too stunned and humiliated to do anything except sit on a beach chair and cry. Honestly, this story should have started where he invited his 2 friends on your honeymoon. Who does that? That's so weird to me, right? Like, I'll admit I'm not a honeymoon expert, but that doesn't sound like what you do. Story 14. When I realized that they were just mirroring my personality the entire time we dated after several years of marriage. They didn't have an original thought or individual aspirations. They have to be walked through every aspect of their life. They married me in hopes that I would mother them. They don't even have an interest in banging after they found out it also requires emotional intimacy on their part. Dragged them to the doctor who put them on SSRIs, begged them to go to therapy. They kept quitting and could never give me an adequate reason why. We went to a couples therapist who they manipulated into believing they had low self-esteem. The therapist told me to love them through it. I sought out my own therapy. The clinician helped me realize I was being manipulated into the role of caregiver without my consent. I told them I was leaving. They promised to seek help. New therapists saw them for 2 years. Within the first 7 months, they were diagnosed as a covert narcissist. They eventually admitted to me that they got married to escape their home life. Their mother is a diagnosed narcissist who severely crippled her children emotionally and mentally. Him specifically by putting him into the golden child role. In her eyes, he is so perfect no one deserves him. And at the same time, she degrades and demeans him when he uses any agency. We are now separated, and I've never been happier. He's utterly miserable because he moved back home. He would rather endure his mother's abuse than be responsible for his own decisions. Hope they're happy together. They deserve each other. Just a quick little nitpick, but a therapist can't legally diagnose anyone with anything. Therapists can't diagnose or prescribe medicine. I think the most they can do is refer you to an expert, but that's it. Story 15. We'd been married several years and the marriage had gotten increasingly worse. He only ate out of those stackable plastic plates with the dividers because they reminded him of being a kid and eating with his parents. He saw them in the cabinet and was outraged because I hadn't stacked them inside one another. I had stacked them but at alternating angles to ensure that they were properly dry and wouldn't be wet between plates. He started lecturing me on how they fit inside of each other in an infantilizing way. I'd known for a long time I didn't want to be married to him anymore. But in that moment, I stared at him with hatred and specifically thought, name a best friend from college, wouldn't do this to me. I'm happy to say I'm out of the abusive marriage and engaged to my best friend from college. Story 16. There were plenty of early red flags, but I tend to look past these things. I have a kid from a previous relationship and we almost didn't date because she wasn't sure if she wanted kids. Understandable, but this was part of our arguments for a good 4 to 5 years. My daughter would have nightmares at a young age and would try to come sleep in the bed with us. She refused and would make her go grab a blanket/pillow and sleep on the floor of our bedroom. Oh, but of course the dogs were always allowed in bed. The final straw was most recently, a year ago almost to the day. I'm a photographer, on and off now for a majority of 10 years. I jokingly say it's just a really expensive hobby, but I would love to make it my career someday, and was invited by a friend to photograph her show. It was EDM, something I had never really experienced before, both in a live setting or with a camera, and it immediately reignited my love for photography. I got home late and tried to explain this level of excitement to her and that I wanted to eventually pursue photography again, only to be laughed at and followed by a solid no. That was the worst night of my life. Realizing that the person I had been with for 10 years just shut down my dream. I supported her through college and grad school, always encouraging her to follow her own dreams. It sucks. But we got divorced, sold the house, and I was fortunate enough to use that money to buy gear and am now in the process of following that dream. Feels good. Story 17. We had been engaged for just over a year, together for around a decade, and I realized I didn't actually want to be with her. I was just too invested and I didn't want to make her upset. I knew we would end up getting divorced at some point down the road, so I decided to end it before then. Went to therapy and realized I'd spent my whole childhood trying to make my parents happy. And then I immediately got into a relationship and spent all of my adulthood trying to make her happy. I was miserable because of it, but I just didn't know. Ah, the good old sunk cost in relationships. I'm glad OP had the sense to cut it off before it got too far, though. That's good thinking. Story 18. About a year and a half into our marriage, she got an internship with Disney and had to move on the other side of the country for 7 months. 6 months into the internship, she tells me she met someone else. She continued to string me along for another 6 months, saying that she doesn't want to get divorced, but she's just been really confused. It turns out, she just wanted to keep using me to pay all of the bills while she finished her degree. Once she was a month away from finishing school, she admitted that she never really wanted a relationship with me. She only started dating me to make her ex jealous. And she had been cheating on me for about 90% of our 10-year-long relationship, and only stuck around because her ex didn't want to get back together and she didn't want to take care of herself. She told me she knew this most recent guy she was cheating with was the love of her life after 3 weeks. They had a kid together less than a year after we got divorced and split up within 2 years.